Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigor Mortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the E stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have the Mortia, or the Mortia. We'll get back into that in a minute.
Why?
You'll find out. So the Mortia is the sequel to the story that we did last week, which was In My Mind. That's the title. The story isn't in my mind.
Was in our mind last week. Yeah.
I mean, it was in our mind because we read it, so therefore it that's how memes work. but no, this story, So this is a kind of an extension of that story, and it's by Monotoned or Avaloxum on creepypasta.wiki, as I discovered when I checked their profile name. They actually go by two different monikers on the website on creepypasta.wiki.
Mm-hmm.
So you can check it out at creepypasta.wiki with In My Mind as well. And let's do our initial recommendations before we dive into the meat and potatoes of our show. I'm gonna partially recommend this story, but not as low as In My Mind.
I am not going to recommend this story.
Interesting.
I am also not going to recommend this one.
Okay.
But we'll see if your
Probably
positive
not.
review will taint ours.
No.
It sometimes happens.
I've given up thinking that.
It's happened before.
No, it hasn't.
Think about insert episode here. You changed
Future
my
me
mind
here.
on that one.
Future me here. It never happens.
It absolutely has happened, though.
I don't know. Maybe. I've just given up. Anyway, so the Mortia, diving into the rundown. Our narrator, Elijah, as we discover later, is in a strange dream world where they are sinking through waves of white powder, and as they wake up, they find themselves in an alleyway with a needle in their arm. Under the influence of the heroin, Elijah wanders out to the road, figuring his boyfriend Michael is going to come to be cross with him about using drugs again. It's then that Michael arrives in a car after searching for Elijah, and manages to get Elijah safely in the back of the car to take him home. In the back of the car, Elijah comes to and sees a horrible twisted woman twitching and staring at him from the ceiling of the car, reaching for him unnaturally with every blink and covering of his eyes. Like she gets closer and like gets ready to like grab him and such. And then the flashing of bright lights from behind the car and honking of a horn snaps Elijah out of his state and seems to banish the vision of the woman from his sight. Just as Michael looks back and chastises Elijah for his drug use, as expected. Elijah then passes out again. He then wakes up back in their apartment sometime later on the couch in Michael's shirt, but Michael is nowhere to be found. So Elijah gets up, partially due to the sun beaming into his eyes, and spends some hours drawing the woman to get it out of his head. And then after remembering the time him and his friend Natalia got their other friend in high school, Gerald, supposedly killed by ODing or overdosing, to which Natalia killed herself by ODing with guilt, Elijah goes to his room and finds his stash of needles to dope up. But then he gets a message from Michael on his phone saying that he'll be back in 5 minutes. And as he is debating using the stuff, there's a knock on the door. But when he checks, Elijah finds that no one is out in the hallway. Elijah does notice that the janitor's room down the hall is open. but there shouldn't be anybody working at this time. So he goes over there and he finds a black box and a note over it with what is scrawled Mortia or Mortia, like tortilla, apparently. With no one around, he crumples the note and into the garbage and returns to his apartment, where he finds the note uncrumpled in front of him on the floor. As he picks it up, the lights go out, and as he pulls out his phone for light, he turns around to hear a noise, and the twisted woman is there, and then right there in his face moments later. Falling back, he stumbles into his room, searches for something to defend himself with, and finds a flashlight under his bed, but it shines ultraviolet light and seems to banish the woman away. He had this flashlight apparently from when he was into ghost hunting. He then hops on his laptop and finds out more about the Mortia and the mass suicides that may be connected to her. And it seems that his friend Gerald isn't dead, but helped a guy named Carlos, supposedly Nair from the first story in my mind, out with dealing with this entity. Relieved that they didn't cause their childhood friend to die, he decides to get rid of his drugs by burning them. And we have this kind of little happy ending-ish, though Elijah wonders where or who the Mortia will strike next. Finn. So that was the rundown for the Mortia. And I suppose we'll move on to everyone tolerates the Grand Inquisitions. At this point, I got one. So it's I'm gonna start with this quote here. I quickly got up, grabbed my laptop from my bed, brought up the search engine, and typed in Mortia instantly. I found something titled "The Little Girl and Mass Suicide." I began to read the article. The author's name was Carlos, and he began to talk about how he battled alcohol addiction and had been haunted by an evil being called the Mortia, a being whom he believes attacks those lost in guilt or struggle. Yeah, that checks out. So this is like right after he's like banished the Mortia with the light and such. And it's a cool like info dump for the creature, but from a writing point of view, I thought it could have been like kind of maybe pushed like it came off way too fast, like something that we segued way too quickly to him hopping on his laptop like literally seconds after he encountered the Mortia. So I would have been I think happier with like if it said something like along the lines of later that day as I was calming down, I picked up my laptop and decided to bring up a search engine, and then it keeps going with what we have.
Yeah.
Just because like again it sort of like was just like instantaneous, like his go-to thing apparently was to seek out his laptop and look up this creature. It's like, no, you need to like that's way too quickly for like things to turn up or things to progress. It felt too rushed to me for the ending. So also, hey, we know what Nair's name was in my mind. Or in my mind.
in my mind.
Yeah. Carlos.
Yeah.
And that's my grammar musician.
And just a question, since we're on this quote anyway.
Yeah.
Did anyone actually Google Mortia?
No. Did you?
Yeah. And the first thing that comes up is Morticia Adams from the Adams family.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because mort is a Latin word for death. So.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that story didn't come up.
Oh. It's almost like it was fictionalized.
I know.
It's almost like it was in a story. So Monotoned, what you really need to do is you need to write an article on a blog somewhere and get it like out there. Never mind the fact that article was probably the in my mind story.
Mhm.
Wow. But yeah, I guess with that segue, Mikey, you're up for Grammar Inquisition.
I have a conjunction junction.
All right.
And next stop, Conjunction Junction. Doot, doot.
It looked infected and disgusting. It took me literal hours to draw her to the best of my ability, and once I finished, I felt complete. So, what happened was, well, terrible. And I am terrible. It's messed up, but that's the price we have to pay. It was Michael saying he would be home in 5 minutes. It had to be some sort of prank, but it wasn't funny. It slowly began to dissipate, and the lights flickered and came back on. It seems like whatever monster or entity is after me is afraid of ultraviolet. But now I know, for both of us, I have nothing to be afraid of or guilty of anymore. It was pretty watching the flames engulf the past and my guilt. Finn.
Wow. that sounded more like a story about like a tortured artist whose friend Michael turns into a monster or a vampire that is like driven back by the ultraviolet light. And then he burns the past. Maybe he's like burning Michael, or like the body of the vampire Michael, and like kind of being relieved that like he's no longer has to be burdened by this monster, like literal monster.
Mm-hmm. Very different story.
Yes.
When you read it with just the sentences that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ends, or buts, because there's always better words to use.
That sounded like a record, like slowly like coming back to its. Probably shouldn't, like its heads or butts. No, that's pretty good. I like that. Yeah, and yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Gamer, I believe you're up then.
Yeah. I suppose I do. I have one. I have sacrificed my work hours to rescue you because you haven't answered your phone for 6 hours. You were gone for 6 hours. I thought you were dead. Elijah, you surely could have died. You're a moron. So, okay, this is
dialogue.
This is dialogue, but
Okay.
I feel the repeat of 6 hours isn't really needed.
I mean, okay,
Like, just cut the whole "you were gone for 6 hours" because if he wasn't answering the phone for 6 hours, he was gone for 6 hours. It's the same thing.
Yes, if this wasn't dialogue, I would agree with you. But because this is dialogue, I feel like it is necessary, or it's not necessary, but it is appropriate because of the tone of the person that's saying this. It's like, you were gone for 6 hours. 6 hours. Like that's kind of where I was like how I was reading it. Was like the person's like trying to hammer home that kind of thing.
I guess. Maybe if it yelled it with an exclamation.
Yeah, maybe with all caps in that one spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. And yeah, like he is in a little bit of a state because he's freaking out because he just found him and he's like he almost died. So I get it. It's just reading it the way it is. It's a little repetitive for my taste. But again, dialogue and mental state of the character at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's all I got for grammar.
Oh, okay. Then I suppose we'll move on to actual thoughts. So I'm going to start with the dream sequence, our favorite thing on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Although, as I followed the voice, the waves of white powder I stood on began to try and bring me down. I used both arms to latch onto the powder, and pull myself out before I began to sink. As I pulled myself, I landed face up to the pure black sky, inhaling, and all I felt was pure coldness. I awoke and instantly sat up. Looking around, I was in some sort of alley, and my vision was blurry, and I felt sick. I looked down at my arm, and I removed the heroin needle. So this first few paragraphs where we get like a dream sequence, and then he wakes up into the alleyway with the heroin and stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm gonna let you finish. First few sentences, not first few paragraphs.
No, like we get the first paragraph is like a dream sequence, and then like the next, and then I also mean like the next
sorry.
paragraph.
I thought you were summarizing what you just read. Never mind.
No. Yeah. So this paragraph and the next one after it, where we get like the dream sequence, and then he wakes up and like he's dealing with like the fact that he's been doping up and stuff in an alleyway. Or at least that's where he's woken up from after doping up. It's a dream sequence in a creepypasta, but to me it feels like this is how you should have dream sequences in creepypastas. Like, because you in this instance he's exiting out of a dream sequence into an unknown and even dangerous reality. That gives it more of a threat level. Like, oddly enough, this kind of I happen to be playing Far Cry 5 recently and then like as I was reading the story, not as I was reading, I wasn't playing it while I was reading the story, but I've been playing Far Cry 5 and then I had to read the story for the show, and I couldn't help but draw some connections again, where in that game you enter a dream state and have to deal with like this like weird like kind of happy dream state, and then you wake up out of it and you're suddenly somewhere you weren't before. It's been days since you were taken or you're gone, and you may have killed somebody. Like, so and you had no control over it, like where you ended up. Like you just end up somewhere else on the map. And similarly for this, like I kind of like this angle of like how the dream sequence is handled in this creepypasta, because it's like, yes, it's a dream sequence, but then the character is in a dire strait when he wakes up as a result of the dream, or the drugs are the result of, like, the dreams are the result of the drugs that he was taking.
Yeah.
So I actually kind of I think more like creepypastas could actually like do this kind of thing where they use a dream sequence, but then have the waking part be like have that surrealism from the dream, but then when they wake up, they're in like a dire situation, or like a horrific there's horrific consequences of what their body was doing while they were awake or while they were sleeping.
It's kind of like a little bit of a werewolf situation.
Yeah, kind
of. In a more magical sort of means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you could definitely have that actually kind of be in even again, pulling from Far Cry 5, there's actually the drug bliss puts you in this like happy state, but then like where your mind is just trapped inside your body, inside like a paradise like state in your mind, and like you're also can share your mind with like other people who are also in that state, but your body you have no control of your body of what it does. So it could be wandering around killing people, kind of like the werewolf scenario, but like almost like a mundane or like a I guess a real world version of like the werewolf syndrome.
Yeah.
Where like the mind kind of takes a back seat as the body does like something horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I brought that because like when I started reading the story, I was like, oh no, it's a dream sequence. And then he woke up and I was like, oh, he was in a dream sequence, and now he's in a dangerous place because he woke up. Like, I like how that I kind of like that. Like I think that should be done more. But I'll move on from that. I blinked again, and her other hand was now facing me as well. My heart began to beat faster, and she began to twitch and approach me at an incredible speed. I covered my face with my hands and heard a car horn. I uncovered my face and watched the car's light behind us beam into the back seat. I kept looking around, not knowing what or who that was. What was that? How do I even describe what just happened? I sat up and glared at Michael, and he turned back and looked at me in confusion as we sat at a red light. So, first of all, like glared, like I sat up and glared at Michael, like, how dare you? But the actual thing of like for why I pulled this quote was I just imagine like the horn honking from the guy behind them is his reaction to seeing the horrible twitching lady in the back seat of the car in front of them. Like he's like, God. Like that's how I would probably how I would react if I saw like a creepy twitching like freaky lady like on the ceiling of the back of the car, and actually I'd be like trying to get the driver's attention, like there's somebody in the back of your car.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then I'm gonna go to the next one here, which is when he's in the apartment. So he just had so at this point he had just he was about to he was contemplating taking the needles that were in his hands, and then I heard a knock on the door, or I heard a knock on the apartment door. So I got off my butt. So I got off my bed and answered with the needles in hand still, because he never mentions that he put the needles down. So it's a good thing that it's clearly the twisted, twitching, creepy lady that trying to fuck with him, and not Michael. Just a like, I guess this might even be like a grammar thing, but like just like maybe have like a little bit in there, just like say that you tossed the needles down on your bed or something, or like back where you found them before you go to answer the door. So that a couple of assholes online don't like poke fun at that sentence.
And just to get rid of any assumptions for it. Yeah.
And then we get the crux of the entire 2 stories that we've read so far. The handwriting, admittedly, was horrible, but it read Mortia. What on earth is a Mortia? Is it similar to a tortilla? Wait, is that how it's pronounced in this story?
I mean, that's how he reads it.
Yeah, so like
he doesn't know how it's pronounced.
Okay, yes, but like usually an author puts this kind of thing in a story to let the reader know that's how you pronounce something.
I guess.
So like,
but
yeah,
realistically, in the lore, he wouldn't know potentially. He probably wouldn't know how to pronounce it correctly because he's just reading a word, just like we read a word and we didn't know how to pronounce this.
Yeah, we assumed it was Mortia with the kind of like the. What is that? Like a soft T? Yeah. But yeah. Yeah, it threw me. I was like, wait, that's how we're supposed to be saying. Mortia sounds way cooler.
Yeah, it kind of flows a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, the Mortia. Il Mortia.
But it's also personal opinion.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm just poking fun. So the next one I have here, I bent down to pick up and notice. Oh, I bent down to pick it up and noticed the blinds moving abnormally, almost as if something had touched them. Is someone here? I yelled, and then the entire building had a sudden blackout. Damn. I grabbed my phone, turned on my flashlight, and began to look around in the dark. Wait, like this was cool, if a little bit tropey for like a creepy moment, like all the power going out as soon as you grab an item and stuff. But wasn't there like sunlight beaming through the windows earlier? Like, should it be that dark inside of like it's like it's kind of hard to like.
Privacy curtains.
Yeah, but like, but it's blinds, so there's no privacy curtains.
Okay, maybe the blinds were shut though, which makes
no, and like the blinds were like flickering, so like somebody was like touching them, so like it's like, yeah, I just like I don't think it would be dark enough that you need a flashlight necessarily, unless it's like abnormally dark. It's like, wait, wasn't it daytime a moment ago? Like, wasn't it like noon a moment ago? Like,
yeah,
that kind of thing could have been added to kind of improve that if you wanted to keep this like whole like dark thing. Like the character has just doesn't realize how, yeah, like it shouldn't be this dark. Like there's some kind of preternatural darkness to the apartment suddenly. Or again, like time is like he's lost more time, and suddenly it's nighttime, or like
it's dark and he pulls the blinds open and it doesn't make it brighter.
Yeah. But yeah, like as cool as that was, like as cool as the moment was, it's just like, wait, shouldn't it be daytime? And like apartments don't get that dark during the day. I mean, yeah. But I digress. I'll move on to the next thing.
Yep.
I heard a strange cracking sound coming from behind me. I shined my light behind me and saw a woman facing the corner. No, I've seen the Blair Witch Project more than a few times to know where this is going. I'm good. I genuinely appreciated this line and moment. It's like, yeah, that is definitely a line I like. It's like, I've seen this movie. The black dude dies first. Let's go.
Problem I have with that
Of course.
is he decides to vocalize that. He says it out loud. It's not a thought.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something I probably would say in that moment too.
You would say it out loud.
Yeah, I would
say that in your head and back
No.
up and be like, ooh.
So I would if there was a group, if there's like one or two, if there was like one other person or like a group of us, and that like I probably voice it then. I might say it out loud because I do talk to myself sometimes when I'm alone. So like it is something that people do to like kind of get their thoughts out.
That's fair. I mean, you're talking to yourself right now. Because
what
we're all you, and you're just doing different accents.
Oh man,
that's the secret.
I mean, and like that's actually pretty impressive since we overlap sometimes.
The magic of editing, baby.
Indeed. Moving right along. Yeah, you guys are just like I'm just what's like that ventriloquist from the comedy guy, Jeff Dunham. You guys,
Yeah.
I just have two puppets, like what, like a Mikey puppet and a Gamer Yellow puppet.
Yeah, totally.
Man, if I did title cards anymore, that's exactly what the title card would be.
Yeah,
it'd just be me next to the recorder with like two puppets of you guys.
It's weird how we just got here, but nothing to do with the actual story. But
no, it's just the flow of conversation, man. But moving on. I grabbed the needles hidden under my jacket in my closet, threw them into the trash can, flicked a match into the trash, and watched the fire, and then got high off the fumes because it's heroin, baby.
Yeah, but does that actually go into it? Yeah,
heroin, like you have to like. I will actually. I think with crack and stuff like that, you have to like burn it and stuff, and then you get the fumes. But like, I'm pretty sure with if you light up heroin, the fumes are gonna get you high.
I mean, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a drug dealer or a doctor, but I'm pretty sure like. That's not a good idea, especially if he's like
for you, yeah.
maybe if it's specified that like he brought the trash can out to like the roof of his apartment or somewhere outside and then lit it up, like, and like, yeah, because if he's inside the building, like then he's like definitely getting the fumes.
But also, if you like describe this shit too much, then it's like kind of ruins the moment if you have to take the time to explain all this.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's just
they're explaining a joke in detail. And then the person's like, yeah, I get it, but now that you explained it, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah, true. Although maybe just my problem here is just like the fact that he's burning the drugs is like, that's not the way to dispose of them.
Well, it's to signify that he's done with it and like it's final.
Yeah.
If you just throws them in the garbage, you can pick them out of the garbage again.
I mean, yeah, but also like the action of throwing them in the trash does also like have that kind of same kind of significance of like getting rid of them and moving on. I don't know. Again, like my funny here was just like he's put them in the trash can, lit them in the trash can, and then got high off the fumes. So, and if anybody out there wants to like tell me that like that's not how heroin works, please let me know. I may be wholly wrong about like how the fumes thing, but like that's just the first thing that came to mind. So,
yeah.
But I'll move on. Actually, with the next sentence, it was pretty watching the flames engulf the past and my guilt. I believe I found a peace of mind in the end, but I wonder, will others be able to? So I kind of like this ending and the story's connection to the previous story as we get like in some of the previous paragraphs and such. It's just the run on or the rush to get to the end was kind of annoying to me, but it allows the other story. It allows for others, like this whole like setup at the end here kind of allows for other stories to be done with the Mortia, or the Mortia if the creative compulsion arises for either for Monotoned. Like you could have an entire anthology of short stories with different people in different scenarios of depression and guilt where the Mortia manifests and tries to end their life or tries to like ruin them basically. And then like some of them may succeed, some of them may not. It definitely seems like some kind of parasitic creature, this Mortia, like attracted to and leeching off of the grief of others until they either kill themselves or manage to banish the creature.
Or kick their addiction.
Yeah, or kick the addiction. Again, like part of the banishing, like you get rid of it by not following through with what it's trying to do. To
yeah, Morse is like, oh, you're no fun anymore. Just goes on to someone else.
Yeah.
There's plenty of tortured souls.
Yeah. So this is kind of where we're gonna go into the I kind of make it gameable, like game fodder kind of thing. Although apparently I did half the work already back in 2013.
Sorry.
So apparently this is the year of stories really like familiarizing with me or like kind of really like connecting with me on like a personal level with like various things that I've experienced or even like some of my creative works in the past. Because back in 2013, I created and drew up a monster for a potential game scenario and like story idea that was kind of similar to the Mortia. Like it was a creature that feeds into and feeds off of depression and grief until the victim commits suicide. And it was a little less human than the Mortia. Like I've shared the image of it with my hosts, so they've seen it. It's this like kind of weird eldritch creature that like is kind of a mix of like an elder god or like kind of a like a skeletal like eldritch thing with like the hair of Samara from or Sadako from The Ring.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Mass Effect. She
No.
has hair.
No. But yeah, upon reading upon reading these entries, these stories, I think I may actually revisit that beastie and like may even stat it up in something like Vossen or Vir itself or maybe even Delta Green, because I could easily see a scenario like again like kind of inspired by these stories where like somebody is looking into a series of suicides and find out that there's a connection of like they were all suffering from depression, but they all had like there was always this like they always found this like note or like some kind of scrawling in on the scene of the crime that like said like the name of the creature or something, or like said like you give the creature, they could be the Mortia if I port like directly from this story to a game, or like come up with a creature with a name for the other creature, because I don't think I actually ever gave that thing a name. So thanks, Monotoned. You have inspired another creative to go back to one of their old products or their old works, and build something from that. You creatively connected with me.
You already have a name for it now. Name it Mortia. Morsha.
Yeah, so and then Mortia in a Porsche. That's how it gets around. It drives a Porsche.
Immediately less terrifying.
Yeah. Or it turns out the Mortia is like the creature that like feeds on like grief and depression, so that when it's people with addiction, when it's not in its car, but when it hops into its Porsche, it's responsible for multiple like car crashes and like road rage accidents.
Yeah,
it feeds on the rage, so it feeds on on depression and sadness when it's not in its car, and when it hops in its car, it feeds on rage and anger.
Wow,
it's like a speed demon or like kind of a reverse Ghost Rider.
So would its name be Morshe, like literally the spelling of Porsche, but
Yeah.
with an M.
Yeah, exactly.
I've always called it Porsche, by the way. I know it's supposed to be Porsche.
I think it is supposed to be Porsche. I think the A is supposed to be silent. I just like because the Mortia and Porsche. So
You mean the E?
Hmm?
You mean the E?
Oh, is it an E? Yeah. Then yeah, it's definitely supposed to be. I think it is supposed to be silent then because yeah. But yeah, that's again that's my little like my 2 cents on like I could make this gameable.
Yes.
Because this creature is like now that we've got another story that kind of like helps corroborate like things that we were a little confused of or thought was like kind of a dream sequence or like just mundane hallucinations from the character in the previous story. We kind of get a more of a supernatural bend for this creature and we kind of get a little bit more about it like through that little like info dump we get. So I really enjoyed that. And my last thing here I'm going to talk about is actually the image that there are 2 images to the story. There's a photo of the crumpled note from Elijah's phone. And then there is the image that was sketched by Elijah. And honestly, I really like the image of the Mortia. Like the eyes are really striking to me. Honestly, the style of the like the way like the person who drew it, like I really like that style of illustration. But the eyes are really like striking for the glare it's giving, which comes up a few times in both stories. Like it's always like kind of staring at you with like creepy eyes.
Yeah.
So I can see, and I could see, like looking at the art, like kind of zooming in and seeing a little bit more of the art. I could see like this taking several hours, like especially if the person is like trying to like get the exact image out of their head of what they saw. So yeah, no, this is a really cool piece of art, like both in and out of the story. Like
Yeah, I'm
it
curious
makes
if it's the author's art or if they got it commissioned or if this is just unrelated art that is now
Yeah.
related.
Yeah, that's true. Like I wonder that too myself actually now. If this was a piece that was commissioned or if this is just like maybe this is what inspired Monotoned to write the story. Or but yeah. That's honestly yeah, exactly. But that's all I got to say about that. So I'm gonna all right, guys. So I've been rather nice to the story. So why don't you guys like it? Here you go, Mikey. These 10s for evil.
Well, since you start talking about images, I'll start with the image of the note. To me, it's not well placed in the story.
I felt the exact same way.
Yeah,
Because the image shows up and you're like, what the heck is this? And then it's not until like a couple paragraphs there later that it's like, oh, I took a picture of it. Then you go, okay.
Honestly, I felt the exact same way about the image of like the art done as well. Because you have to read through that entire paragraph before it actually gets to the point where he's sketching her out. So while I'm reading down the side of this paragraph, having this picture
image is staring at you.
Yeah, I'm like, what the heck is this here for? So I feel like after it says that, like right before it said it took me literal hours to draw it to the best of my ability, that's where it should go.
Yeah.
And then same with the note, put it right before or right after it mentions the note.
Yeah, I could see that. It is interesting because like when I pulled this entire story into Google Docs, it did actually like bring it down, like bring the images into like its own like line because of the formatting differences. So I'm curious if it actually brought it, I can't remember if it actually did, but I'd be curious if it actually did like move the Mortia picture below the part where he's like talking about the drawing, or if that's just like again a formatting thing that has to do with like the Wikipedia page.
Well, either way, it's poor formatting, and I read this on mobile, so
Oof.
Like the images showing up before they're mentioned was like what? Like and I mean the sketch wasn't so bad because I mean it's a sketch of the Mortia
Yeah, you can
and
put two and two together. Okay, this is what it means. It's not talking about it, but that's what it is. Yeah.
yeah. But the note itself, like it shows up well before it's even mentioned.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't make sense.
Fair.
Because of that. All right. And then my first actual thought is partially my own fault, and I think Gamer probably has this sort of note too, but he probably took it a different way, and I just left it. So the quote here is, "He'll understand, right? That's what lovers do." So at that point, I assumed that Nair, because we didn't have a name at that point, was
Mhm.
female.
Yeah.
Then later, we get, "I thought you were dead, Elijah, and Shirley could have died. You're a moron." At that point, for me it was so far down and away, and since I'd already established in my mind that Nara was female, I couldn't rewrite the story in my mind.
Oh.
So for the rest of the story, Elijah was still female.
Fair. Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough. I mean,
Yeah. That is partially on you, but it is also an understandable because like it does happen. Like, yeah. When I heard about the that's what lovers do, I was like, look. I think I remember while I was reading the story, I was trying to see if there were any like signifiers of a gender, just so I could like properly address that in my mind as well. And it wasn't until we got again the Michael's comment is like, okay, so they are a couple, but like they're a same sex couple.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, I too was confused, although like I just kind of rolled with it when it happened. It didn't, oddly enough, it didn't hang with me like it did with you this time, Mikey.
Okay.
Like
Well,
I didn't get
normally,
stuck up on it.
normally you get annoyed because you have to rewrite what you thought previously.
Oh, it is annoying. Yes, I was annoyed, but I'm just like, okay, fine. It's a guy now. Because like for me, when I was reading it, at the start, it's this guy who's like waking up in an alley and from like drug use and stuff like that. So I immediately thought guy first, partially because if there's no gender, I immediately go guy first, anyways, because I'm a guy, and also because guys are generally bigger shitbags than girls are. So, like,
ouch.
in regards to drug use and stuff, like that tends to happen more with guys, I believe. So that's what I started with, but then it started talking about the relationship with the other guy,
Michael.
So, with Michael.
Yeah.
So I immediately thought woman as well. I'm like, okay, I guess it's a woman. Okay, that's fine. And then it went back to a guy. I'm like, okay, I guess it's a guy. That's fine. I'll move on. Like, gender kept swapping for that character, but at least it only did it a couple of times.
Yeah, like at least like when hang
It
on. So
stopped.
yeah, so like okay, so the Michael thing's on the second paragraph. And then where do we get Elijah? Elijah pops on like yeah, about like 3 or 4 like mini paragraphs
Mhm.
down from that. So yeah. It is like I'm not it's not like there's nothing it's not inherently bad, but it's just like because that's also on us. Like part of it is on us, but like
Mm-hmm.
some kind of signifier early on might have been nice.
Yeah, like as soon as they
Mhm.
wake up, like I know it's kind of hard to do it, but
Yeah.
like as soon as they wake up, they can think like, oh, Michael's gonna kill me. He's gonna be like, oh, Elijah, you shitbag, you gotta get off these needles. Like, just think that.
Yeah.
Or
Like he
something.
could because he was already kind of wondering about that like
Yeah.
as he was wandering into the road.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
so it is your fault, but also not your fault that you thought
Mhm.
that way.
And then because I thought that way, when it got to the art of the Mortia, I just associated that to being a self-portrait of Elijah, because that's sort of what a drug user might look like.
That is true. That does look like somebody who has definitely been on some things.
Yeah.
that picture. But yeah. Also, for some reason, like maybe it's just because of the style of it, but it kind of has a little bit of a Tim Burton-y kind of like gothic-y kind of like style to the illustration, but it kind of reminds me of like it could almost pass as like a female version of Edgar Allan Poe. Like if you look at Edgar Allan Poe, he kind of has the same head shape as the Mortia.
Mm-hmm.
And the same kind of facial features. Like, yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, I'm glad I wasn't the only one who thought like kind of got like I think that's why I like it so much. Is it's got like a very unique, like kind of almost like Tim Burton-y kind of style to it.
I didn't think of it at the time, but as soon as you said it, it's like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So on to my next textual thought. I didn't really care for the drug user angle, because that made this story for me super mundane. Like again, it's one of those things where it's all in his head, or so there's nothing supernatural about it. It's just what they're going through. So I want it to be supernatural, but as soon as you throw drugs into the story, it's not supernatural in my mind anymore.
I politely disagree, but I will let you keep your opinion.
I really agree.
Okay.
Fuck you, he's right. That's
well, fair enough, I suppose. Jesus. Yeah, because like.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll continue.
Oh no, it's just like. Again, like
we're allowed to have different opinions.
Yeah, we're allowed to have different opinions. It's just like I never think that like unless it specifically tells me that like yes, it was the drugs. The supernatural is always there. The supernatural is always in the wings. So
it's one of the situations where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't kind of thing.
It's also the story kind of like I've seen other like products, like other things where like they use the same kind of like tactic where they use like, oh, it was like there's drugs involved, so some of it's hallucinations. But then like, what if it isn't? Like, what if there is something deeper? What if there is actually a supernatural like thing going on? Like the drugs are just kind of like convoluting or kind of like confusing the reality, because that's what drugs do. So it's sort of that's sort of what like a lot of like psychological horrors that and that use supernatural elements as well kind of tend to do, is like, is it all in their head or is it something supernatural? It is sort of a
focused on in this though, that it seems like it's kind of locking down on that's the reason.
Yeah, but it's also
to me and Mikey and our thoughts.
Yeah, no, and I get it. It is also like a tricky thing to pull off so that you don't have people like you guys who are like, this isn't supernatural at all. This is just, he's on drugs. Like, this is bullshit. I'm being like very like sarcastic about that. Like that, I don't actually think you guys are assholes. But
you don't have to think, you can know.
Yeah. But like what there's something I had here. It's like like I think you can't really like I think the problem or the not problem, but the issue here also is like when you're dealing with with a supernatural creature that feeds on depression and grief and stuff like that. Well, a lot of depression and grief, like oftentimes, not all the time, I'm not blanketing it all, but oftentimes substance abuse kind of goes hand in hand with it.
Yeah.
And that kind of
use that to cope.
Exactly. It's used as a coping mechanism for their pre-existing condition and such. And then when you throw in the supernatural element, like this creature literally seems to feed on the guilt and grief of others. but is it there? Is it actually there, or is it just a manifestation of their their substance abuse, or is it actually a creature that's feeding on them? But like that's part of the allure of the horror here is like, is it real or is it fantasy? Like, is it actually like is it the drugs or is it a monster? Or are drugs the monster? Like it's that kind of it's that balancing act that these kind of stories kind of have to tell, or have to try and find the sweet spot for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it seems like you guys have kind of like you teetered on. It's like no, there's nothing. It's too mundane.
Yeah. But we fell off that cliff.
Yeah,
If there was a secondary source of the name and stuff like that, and of the description of the creature, then it could be. But
Yeah.
even all this, it's referring back to Nair from the first story.
Who they bring up. We get clarification about the bottle that he had in his hand. He was suffering from alcohol addiction. So I get it from your guys' angle. So maybe there should be another story that has a non like substance abuse like situation with like grief and depression and such.
It's not even the substance specifically. It's also the fact that it's talking about the same characters again. You know, because didn't you say that the it's who's Nair? Is it Michael?
No, Nair is
Oh,
Elijah. Oh no,
no,
Nair is Carlos in the previous story. Carlos was the main character in the first story, and then
right.
Gerald.
He got the name of Mortia from the other person who moved into his place.
Yeah, the survivor who gouged her eyes out when her family killed themselves, and then she was in the asylum. So she's, I mean, again, she's also an unreliable narrator because she's in an asylum. So that, but again, like that's that type of that genre of horror 101, like substance abuse, when dealing with depression, asylum, like people in asylums, like that's the whole thing of like cosmic horror. Even is like, is cosmic horror like is Cthulhu actually out there, or is it just a guy in a padded room spouting gibberish about an octopus god?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like
so
actually,
we do actually kind of have like a secondary source of all this through the lady in the insane asylum.
Yeah,
that's the other person who said Mortia, and the other one being Elijah finding the note and all that.
Yeah.
But again, they're both, I don't know.
Yeah, like
it could still it's not a strong enough connection, I still feel. I don't know why.
Yeah. And like you guys don't have that you guys don't see that connection, or whereas like I'm seeing that connection. Again, I think it's just because like we have like different like views on like when we consume media, or like when we see things in stories and such.
Yeah.
So
I think for me and Mikey, it would hammer it home a little bit better that it is a supernatural creature if there was a reliable narrator person that found it.
Yeah, like what if Michael like showed up and actually saw the creature and stuff? Like what if we got Michael's side of things, like, and he actually like encountered the creature? Or like I said, like I feel like there should almost be another story where there's a character that isn't like under the influence of some kind of like narcotic or alcohol or anything like that, so that we do kind of get a little bit more verification that like this is happening to somebody who is suffering from like grief and depression of some kind, but isn't under the influence of any kind of like external stimulus.
It might only show, like, if it is a supernatural creature, it might only show up to people that are under the influence of something.
Oh, maybe like because they're under the influence of it, they're like their perception has been altered enough
and all that. Yeah.
So
even if the main character was Michael in this, and they're dealing with their lover that's like getting screwed up by this creature, they'd have they wouldn't be able to see it because they're not on the influence. They're not the ones grieving.
Yeah. See, this is what I like. Like, this is what I like about it, is like it's getting us talking about it, because it might be a supernatural entity that only can be seen by people under the influence, but also like who are grieving and stuff. Or it might be just the drugs. Like this has created a conversation or a debate even, or like a discussion of like whether or not this thing is actually supernatural or if it's all in their heads or in their minds.
Mhm.
Like and again, like that's kind of the point of that entire genre of horror, not just in creepypastas, but in like in horror media, is the psychological horror of like, is it something supernatural or is it all in their heads?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this story is touching on. It's just, yeah. So that's why I'm not like actively trying to like dissuade you guys. Like, no, you're wrong. It's supernatural, because it may
As
not
we
be.
talk about it for 10 minutes.
Well, no, yeah, we exactly. We're talking about it for 10 minutes because like I'm at no point have I tried to dissuade you from it. I'm just saying like it's
Aside from the 10-minute discussion that you are holding us hostage in.
well, no, do you feel trapped?
No, I'm joking.
Okay. Yeah, like I see it as supernatural, you guys see it as mundane, and that's fine. Like we can both see them this way. Is all I was getting at. And I'm just sorry if that ruins the story for you guys. But I'll stop talking.
Okay.
Discourse over.
All right. And then my final note here is about Gerald. So, to me, it seems like we get a story about someone named Gerald dying, and then we get an article where Gerald is alive, but honestly, it could just be a different Gerald.
Yeah, well,
But
except the
there's a
character
picture
recognizes.
and they
Yeah,
look exactly like him.
Well, but
it could
they
be.
could look very similar to the other Gerald.
They aren't.
Exactly.
They are also in like a strange, in a weird state of mind. So they could, getting back to what I was just talking about, it's like where maybe it's like sort of wish fulfillment or like wishful thinking kind of thing. Like their perception is so skewed that like they saw Gerald's like, wait, my friend Gerald who died, we accidentally killed him by ODing him, and then they see him like, it looks exactly like Gerald. He's alive.
He's fine. I went to his funeral, but it's fine.
Well, no, it does. Here's the thing. Actually, I removed this from my notes because for me it was cleared out. But earlier on, it's like we thought we had killed our friend. Our friend never showed up for the rest of the school year, or like the rest of classes that year. They never like when he's thinking back on like when him and Natalia accidentally like OD'd Gerald. They never once say that they killed him. They said like it was very vague. So it led me to believe it's like, oh, this still could be the Gerald from the previous story. And then at the end, like we kind of get that little bit of for me, it was confirmation. It's like, oh no, yeah, so it is the same Gerald. So I don't need to put this in my notes.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah, here we are, because again, it's almost like our show's a discussion.
Nah.
Yeah. So that's into my extra thoughts.
Oh, did you actually get your like what you wanted to get out about Gerald and stuff, like, or do you still think that it can't? This isn't Gerald. Like, is this Gerald to you, or is this not Gerald?
If it is Gerald, it's not the same Gerald.
Okay. Interesting.
Like she's drawing connections that aren't there because of the altered state of mind or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, honestly, like, depending how many years have passed, like, do you remember what the people that you went to school with looked like at that time? Like,
I mean,
it's one of those things where you might have a vague, like, that looks sort of like someone, but
do we have a time frame of how long it's been?
No,
we don't. No.
It could be last year then.
Yeah.
Well, if it was last year, then that would we could be much better proof that it is Gerald, but we don't.
It could
So
also
I'm
like even
assuming
like
there's
yeah. Sorry,
that
keep going.
basically I'm left to assume that there's a few years from when he went to school, got drug addiction, and is now assuming that he's seen someone that he went to school with. And like
For some reason, I had the
if
feeling that they were still in school. They were just
No, I think
like
they were in
late.
like I think they were like I got the impression because we get that like kind of time frame with like the previous story, and the previous story like they were post college buddies like Gerald and Carlos.
Yeah, because it
So
does say I was a top student in art class in middle school. Was as in
yeah,
past tense.
so I assume this was like at least a couple of years, like probably like 4 or 5 years in the future from high school or from their high
Yeah,
school. So
fair.
to allow for like
Yeah.
that kind of like post college stuff, but
Mhm.
yeah, well, and people change. Like you,
Hmm.
it's one of those things where like if you saw them, like I said, you might have some inkling that it's them, but unless you like are able to confirm, like if we had a last name for Gerald,
yeah, like if it gave Gerald's
that
last name, so yeah, that would yeah.
that would help solidify that it is Gerald.
Also to kind of help your point, as much as I don't want to. um, so like one of our friends that I haven't seen really since like for about 2 years now because of the pandemic shit. I saw at the movie theater the other day, and it took me a solid 5 seconds to realize who it was.
Yeah.
And he was like, they were walking up to me, but they had changed because they had gotten a little bit thicker and a little bit like, and like their hair was different. I was like, oh, how's it going? Holy shit. It's been so long. But yeah, it was like literally I had like a moment where I was like, who's this person coming up to me? Oh,
Yeah, it'd be like if you didn't see me on a regular basis, pre and post COVID.
oh yeah, you're a completely different person.
I've lost so much weight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a surprise when I see you again.
I'll make sure to put the fat back on before I see it. So it won't be weird.
Just have a fat suit in the closet.
Yeah. It's always just been a fat suit. I've always been actually in good shape underneath it the whole time.
Or you just do Fat Boy no Jutsu.
Yeah.
Sorry. Had to get the ninja joke in once. But yeah, okay.
Mhm.
So that's your that's the end of your actual thoughts then?
Yep.
Okay. Gamer then. I suppose you're up for actual thoughts.
I suppose I am. Okay. So for me, when I started reading this, is it the very first sentence? It is the very first sentence. The very first sentence is, I'm in some kind of dreamland. As I look around, I can see waves of white patter and a strange voice calling my name, as if beckoning. So in the last story, as we've talked about, I saw it all in the guy's head because he's in a drunken stupor. This time around, I'm seeing it as someone high off their ass on cocaine. Because the first sentence is talking about this white powder all over the place.
Yeah.
Like in the very first sentence. That being said, it is heroin, but it wasn't far off from my assumption from the very first line. Talked about the position of the images. So what bugs me about this story is the same thing that bugged me about the previous one. And maybe it's just because I'm a different person and I don't think the same way, and because I haven't had an addiction, so I don't really truly know what it's like, and I haven't suffered these same sorts of grief as these people. But both Nair and his friend got into hard drugs, it seems, because they accidentally killed their friend with hard drugs. And it kind of seems like doing hard drugs because they feel like they're doing the hard drugs because they feel guilty for what happened. But for me, I feel like that would just scare the hell out of me to keep clean for the rest of my life. if like you do the hard drugs once and then you think you kill your friend. Like that would scare you straight, right? And yet in both of these stories, people like just immediately go to these drugs to I guess deal with the grief, even though it is what caused the grief.
You just hammered home exactly how addiction works with depression a gamer. Yeah. Like, yeah, for some of us, yeah, like it would scare straight. For others though, you just kind of double down. Like that's how why drug addiction happens oftentimes.
Yeah.
Is like it you know it's bad for your body, but it makes you feel better than the shittiness that you always feel when you're sober. Like,
but in this instance,
yeah,
it is also a constant reminder of what's giving you grief in the first place. It is both helping with the grief and also helping keep the grief there.
Again,
I guess it's because like they did it with Gerald, so they've already had it in their system. So I guess they just got super addicted the first time, so they can't kick it. But
I understand like what like you don't like you're like you're having a hard time like believing that this is a thing. This is a thing that happens with drug addiction.
Oh, I'm not saying I'm having a hard time believing it. It's just the way without actually injecting heroin in my veins
and experiencing this exact situation.
Yeah, I don't think I need to do like a study on this to see how accurate this is. But
yeah, we're not doing a MythBusters.
No, I'll pass.
Hard pass.
Yeah, but I don't know. It felt weird to me, even though, as you're saying, it's probably closer to the truth than what you think.
Mm-hmm.
But it still just kind of felt weird that they're comforting themselves with the reminder of what happened instead of moving on from it,
Yeah. No, it's why this subject is sometimes also hard to like represent in stories and in horror stories and stuff like that. But it's also why horror stories put them in there, is because like it is something that is real world scary.
Yeah.
And also they also use horror. We often use horror, like as much as like sci-fi gets like the big thing for using sci-fi stories like with robots and rockets and shit like that to tell a story about a real world thing, like using robots or aliens to talk about slavery and colonialism, or like or on a lighter note, like using like coming up with crazy technology that in like a far future sci-fi thing kind of like dream up what the human potential is for like greatness and stuff, and like what we can achieve. So does horror do so well for telling stories about like telling stories about real world problems and issues with a candy coating of supernatural and like something and a monster. Like werewolf stories are often about abusive raging relationships. Vampires are about like sexual predators. Ghosts are about grief and like regret. Like haunted houses are about is basically an economic horror. Like, why does that person still live in that haunted house even though it's like clearly being attacked on, or they're clearly being attacked on a regular basis? Like, well, they've sunk all their money into this house, so if they leave, they're homeless. And like, so like that kind of stuff. Like that's what horror can do, is they can be used to tell stories about real world problems and issues with a scary candy coating or with a spoopy candy coating. So
I guess for me, what would help with it is if just there was one line saying like, I wish I could kick this because I know it's just reminding me of of what got me here in the first place, like just something like that.
Like
just acknowledge that this is shit. Not that this is shit. That their choice to continue doing the drugs is not good, but they don't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, and I even think I know where it could be put. Like when Michael chastises Elijah for taking drugs and stuff, and
Elijah just tell him.
Well, yeah, Michael can tell him, but also like Elijah just kind of like, like he just kind of like just takes it, like just takes the chastising because he knows it's coming, and he also knows it's true. we could have before he passes out back in the back of the car there, we could have a moment where he like reflects on, like, yeah, I know this shit is crappy, but like I can't, like I wish I could kick it, but I can't. That kind of thing. It's like like the what I did was was just so wrong, and I'm a terrible person, and that's why I do this stuff. And then like
every time I do it, it just reminds me of Gerald and what we did to him, but I can't help it.
And then we get Gerald's like the story about Gerald a little bit later, which then like kind of that means that's foreshadowing for the Gerald story.
Yeah.
So yeah,
he's a herald of Gerald.
God damn it! No one outside of listeners of One Less Die are gonna get the heralds of Gerald.
You're welcome for that seamless plug.
Thank you.
To our sister podcast.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, this is for me and Gamer here. Sorry, Mikey. Sorry for audience.
It's not Shadowrun, but we apologize.
Every time I heard Gerald in both of these stories, all I could think of was a Cockney accent.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right.
I'm not aware Gerald is a troll god that was birthed into fruition just through tale.
From one of our Pathfinder campaigns on One Less Die. Plug.
Yes.
Digression over.
So, in regards to the note, so he decides to take a picture of it when he finds it.
Yeah.
For my opinion, again, which is questionable at this point, because I keep saying it in my head, this is weird. But either way, he finds the note, immediately takes a picture of it, for no good reason other than to be able to add it to the creepypasta entry.
Yeah, I'm honestly with you on this. I didn't need the note. Like as a photo.
With having it.
No. Okay. I didn't clarify what I meant. I meant I didn't need the note as a photograph.
I still disagree.
Okay.
I'm fine with having it as a photographed thing, because that's proof of stuff that went down, quote unquote.
Okay.
And the quote unquote proof as well. Everything's quoted. But my problem is just the manner of how he got it. Just because up until that point, all that happened was he saw the janitor's door open.
Yeah, and assume that Liam, the janitor, was still working.
He could have just not closed the door all the way, and the wind hit it a little bit, and now it's ajar. Or it's still a door, but it might be ajar now. But and then he goes in, and he sees this note, and he just takes a picture of it and crumples it and throws it away. Even though that could have been a note that the janitor wrote to remember something. And he just went in there and took his stuff and threw it out.
It's kind of a dick move.
Kind of, yeah.
Like if he just put it back on the box and then went back to his apartment and it was there on the floor, the same creepiness would be there.
Yeah.
Except he doesn't look like a douchebag for crumpling up this note that Liam might have put on that box to remind him of something.
Yeah.
Also, I like how we get like all these names in this one versus the other one. Like we had I think we had Gerald in the first story, and that was about the only name we got. And on this one we get the janitor's name.
Yeah.
We get
He's
Liam.
not even there in the flesh.
He's just mentioned. Mind you, I think his name is brought up in dialogue, not out of dialogue. So like that's actually, again, it's a nice touch because again, like the character is like actually sounds like a person.
Yes,
because they're actually shouting out somebody's name.
But yeah, either way, the whole note thing of how he first got it was weird because there's no creepiness that got on yet. Not since he sobered up, at least.
Yeah.
So the urge to take it was strange, to take a picture of it and all that.
Odd.
And although like I get why, because it's like, oh, I threw it out and then it's back. It shows like there's some creepiness, supernatural stuff going on in the next paragraph. But that would have been a good time to take a picture of it because that's the first instance of something creepy happening. And then if he took a picture of that, crumpled it, threw it out, and then he finds it again, then that's just confirmation of his previous thought of something weird's going on.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Also, when he says quote unquote, I saw the same note, does that mean it's identical in every way, or is it just another ripping of a yellowish piece of paper with a different, poorly written set of the same words? Because same note, I could get 2 pieces of paper and write pen 15 on both of them. They're the same note.
Okay, I think at this point we're being a little pedantic, but
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
they're the same note. They're not necessarily identical. If they are identical, it should just put the exact same note.
Yeah.
Instead of just
Or-
the same note. That's my whole point.
I would even go and say, I found the same note, and then like, I know you'd hate this, but like I'd have it like a short sentence to like, emphasize the exact same note! Exclamation point.
That's awesome. That's good.
Okay.
I like that.
Why do you constantly
Emphasis.
Yeah, okay.
Emphasis on something weird happening, not just a short sentence in the middle of nothing.
Fair.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And then I do like the idea of like him finding the note in the door, like as he gets into his apartment on the floor. He takes the photo there, crumples up the note, throws it in the trash bin, walks out to like the kitchen, maybe to the counter, and there's another note. It's the exact same note, but it's on the counter. Or even if it's like it's even uncrumpled. Like it shows sign that he crumpled it.
Oh, it was crumpled, and
that would be even more fucked up, I think.
That is actually creepier.
That's so much fun. Because it means that, like,
because it's not supernatural at that point. Because there's something in his house that just took it out of the garbage and put it back.
It can easily be supernatural because like he picks it up, takes the photo, crumples it, throws it in the garbage, walks 5 steps into the kitchen to the counter, and sees the same note, and it's uncrumpled.
Sorry, it is. Yes, in that aspect, it is still supernatural, but it's supernatural in a mundane way.
Yeah, it's supernatural.
The creature is supernaturally fast to do the mundane action of grabbing the piece of paper and laying it out flatly and nicely and putting it back there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That is cool.
Yeah.
And in regards to the note and everything, from the context of everything, the note preludes this thing attacking, basically. So, is Liam dead? Is that why he had a note in there?
Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god!
Or at least has he been attacked? Because
is he upstairs like hanging from a noose?
Yeah.
Like oh shit!
Because right after Elijah finds it, he immediately gets attacked.
Yeah. Did
So Liam's dead, I think.
or did the Mortia wait for Liam to leave and then like set up this like little like cat and mouse toying with Elijah? Or did she just straight up kill?
Maybe Liam's just fine.
Yeah, maybe Liam's fine, or maybe he's not.
Yeah.
maybe he's at the bottom of the because it references his apartment, so like maybe he's at in the basement after like at the bottom of the laundry chute or the garbage chute.
Yeah, he's like doing the laundry.
Yes, that's exactly what he's doing, and
He's
not
fine.
like not crumpled into on the bottom of the basement.
I want to believe that he's fine. Actually, I don't. It's creepier otherwise.
I was gonna say we're suddenly really concerned about this character who's only named and we're given an occupation for.
Because it's like if it was a dog. He's innocent.
He's just an innocent bystander.
Yeah.
Hashtag justice for Liam.
Yeah, totally.
Who may or may not. No, hashtag justice for Liam? Like question mark? I just love that we just like, what happened to Liam? I was like, oh shit.
We're all of a sudden way more concerned about him than anything that's happening to Elijah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll move on from there.
Okay.
My last one is just in regards to the ending.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the story just sort of stops. It like he takes a few minutes. You mentioned before how he just attacks the ghost and then immediately turns around and his laptop is hooked up and on. Like
we found out everything about the creature and like we found out about Carlos and Gerald's like, all right, I'm getting rid of my needles. All right, I'm burned. I feel better.
Yeah.
Moving on.
It almost feels like there was a character limit on this and he had to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it could go on longer and it would be for its benefit.
Yeah. Like we could have gotten a little bit more, like maybe have Michael show up and like maybe have Elijah and confide in Michael about what he experienced, and then like, no, I'm not on drugs. Look what I found. Like, kind of thing. Maybe, or yeah, maybe
I
Michael
burned those
doesn't believe
after I
him.
took a
Like,
last shot of heroin. I'm not on drugs.
well, no, like he got rid of the drugs, or
Yeah, I
he
know.
yeah. Or yeah, you could have that thing where like, again, you could elaborate even further. Like, it would. I think, yeah, like you said, for the story's benefit, elongate the story, but like maybe Michael doesn't believe Elijah, and like Elijah has to kind of try and find a way to convince Michael that like what he experienced did actually happen, and it wasn't just a drug fueled fever dream, kind of thing. So Michael is just Mikey and you in game in this situation. It's like
a little bit, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah. And also I feel like he dealt with the Mortia or Mortia,
Mortia.
the Mortia a little too easily. Like he just happened to find the exact vein to it underneath his bed and just one shot gone, and then it just leaves him alone for presumably like a good half hour at least.
Well, yeah, because suddenly he's relieved after he finds out that like Gerald isn't dead. So suddenly the grief that he's been suffering from all this time has kind of been lifted off of him. But
yeah,
I
after
agree,
like 30 minutes of Googling and finding stuff.
Yeah, but I agree. The ending, like that like final conflict that was like a few sentences, that could have been drawn out way better for the benefit of the story. I do
Like
agree
if
with that.
he needs to find closure on this to get the creature to stop fighting him, fine. But I feel like he should be like Googling while staying frosty with the ultraviolet light, you know, like
Yeah,
have some danger to his Google searches. I can't believe I'm saying this. Because in the time it takes from him to want to like clear his mind of this and actually doing it, he's still in grief because he's still obsessing over this, so it still should be attacking him, I would think.
Yeah.
Unless just the act of throwing out the needles. Because he burned that first? No, he burned that after finding the truth.
Yeah, after finding the truth, like he's like, "Oh, Natalia, you can rest easy, and so can I. I don't need these drugs anymore." Because that's the grief that's been weighing on my heart this whole time, is that we killed our friend. And like suddenly, like that's unfortunate. Maybe that is all that it was. Like that's all it took. Like that was the secret of the Mortia, is that it was sticking around because it was feeding off of his guilt for accidentally killing his friend for all those years ago. But
yes, and I get that, but there was no struggle to get there.
Yes,
it was just one. It tried to come after him. He fell back, grabbed a flashlight, flashed it once, and that's the end of that struggle.
Honestly, what we got was the bare bones of the conflict. We needed more meat.
Yeah, for sure.
And I agree. Like I do. This is why I didn't give the story a full recommendation. It's like the story needs some editing, and like it feels like much like the first story. I think this story feels like a first draft. So and it needs to be like these are the revisions basically that we're giving for the story.
I mean, welcome to our podcast. That's what we do.
Yeah. And you can take it or leave it, whoever's listening to this, if you're the author.
Because we are not professionals by any means. We've just read a lot, and we like and dislike certain things from stories, and we take that experience and force it onto other stories.
Force it upon other creative works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's legitimately like, welcome to the human race.
Pretty much.
welcome to like people's like different perspectives on things and stuff. Like that's going to happen. So
yeah, that's basically all my notes.
Okay. So I suppose we'll move on to final thoughts then. So again, weird. I liked this story. And I believe it does enhance the previous story retroactively for me. That said, like I said, like moments ago, I'm not giving this a full recommendation. I'm giving it a partial recommendation, because while I like the idea of the story and of the creature, there and like we just had this conversation about it, this story is fairly bare bones. It gets its point across, which the point it gets across I liked, but I would have liked some more meat and potatoes, some more elaboration on certain things. The final fight, I didn't mind, but as talking with Gamer here, yeah, it could have used a lot more. Like you could have made fleshed that out into a couple of paragraphs of tense, like scrambling through the apartment away from the creature, or like trying to escape it and some of that. Like in this preternaturally dark apartment, suddenly it's no longer daytime. So like the sunlight isn't beaming down past the Mortia and like banishing her, because spoilers, sunlight is ultraviolet rays. So, and then like we get that climactic kind of end, or kind of like triumph for Elijah, where they pull out the flashlight, and turns out it's a flashlight from when they were ghost hunters, or like into ghost hunting and stuff, and like managed to vanquish the creature, or at least banish it away for some time. Yeah, the story, I like the blend of psychological horror with like the grief and depression and addiction stuff mixed in with the potential supernatural horror of an entity itself. Like that's why I like about those kind of stories, when they actually give us a supernatural option. It doesn't even have to be like that option doesn't even have to be like the correct one. Like it could just be like a red herring, or like a red, like it doesn't actually turn out to be supernatural. It turns out to be still psychological, and it was all in their head. They're in an asylum kind of thing. I'm fine with that. It's when a story like plays it too mundane. Like I like to have that little flair of like the unknown in stories. I don't like to know everything, because that's not what horror is about. Horror is about not knowing everything and being freaked out by that.
Yeah, less is often more.
Yeah. But we get a cool creature, even in this story, and like again, I might legit try to stat this out in Vossen, because it feels like a Vossen creature. Apparently, this is the year of Vossen for me as well.
I mean, it's the same old story. It's whatever we are currently engaged with, that is what is in our heads. Like that's why I keep talking about Guilty Gear. You keep talking about Fallout and Far Cry and Boston, because that's what we do right now.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like what we were experiencing at the same time as like experiencing this piece of media. So like there's maybe some cross contamination. But regardless, for the story itself, like like it had some potential. I think it does help the previous story, like having both of these stories, like they do kind of like there is a nice connection between the two. But that said, I'm gonna give it a partial recommendation. For combining the for the information we get on the Mortia here, and also the combining or the connecting to the previous story. But it needs a lot more editing. Before I would consider giving it a full recommendation. So that is my final thoughts. Mikey, these Deads for Evil.
Alright. So as stated before, the super mundane drug user angle was there from the get-go. And I did get annoyed with not knowing Nair's gender until the name drop, which for me was too far gone, because I'd already established in my mind that he was a she. In fact,
I
now
you were just rolling with that, by the way, and just like, no, I reject reality and substitute my own.
yeah,
that is the easier way to deal with it, so it doesn't bug you as much. But it bugs you in a different way, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it just now I don't know if I will forever see Elijah as a female name.
Wow.
Let's see. So yeah, there's that, and then there's the Gerald thing, which to me it just seems like grasping at straws, and it's just some other guy named Gerald. So
his name isn't even Gerald, like, as who knows what's going on in his mind right now? It might be like George something.
Yeah.
But he's just believing it is.
It's just Jerry.
Jerry, yeah.
Yeah. So
G, but that's fine.
You can have Jerry can be a G.
Can it?
Yeah.
No. The only Jerry I know is a Seinfeld.
There's a problem.
That's not a problem. That's a solution.
Yeah, no, Jerry. Yeah, Jerry. I just looked it up. Jerry does. You can't have a Jerry as a G.
Okay, fine. Never mind then. I'll shut up.
Good.
so and as was stated with the note, like there's other ways to make the note creepier and potentially give us that shine of supernatural. To make this go, oh, is it drugs or is there something else going on? Because like the monster in this just shows up and they don't do anything.
It tried to
So
attack him.
It tries to attack him on several occasions.
well,
Did it try to attack him in the car? It just kind of
Yeah.
showed up there and was like, hey.
It was slowly like it was like almost like playfully like trying to like I'm gonna get you, boo. Like it was like it was like playing with a child, like a baby. It's like peekaboo, like
Yeah.
because it was like it was moving abnormally fast, but like every time he like closed, like he like passes like eyes over his, like he'd like look at it after like closing his eyes or like shielding his face with his hands. He'd like see it like move suddenly like closer to him, but then it would like shirk. It must be like shirking back because like a car isn't that big.
No.
So like it's not moving that fast.
It's just messing with him though, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the monster actually ends up touching Nair at any point.
No.
Because they get the flashlight out with the ultraviolet and the guy honking with the lights.
Yeah.
So like
Was that why
to me,
it didn't attack? Hang on.
Maybe that's what the
I'm gonna let
bright
you
light.
finish.
Yeah.
But is that why it didn't attack him in the car? Because of the lights that went into the cabin?
I mean, like high beams are pretty bright. Like they're a pretty nasty bright light, but like, unless can you have ultraviolet high beams?
I don't think it has to be ultraviolet, is what I'm getting
No,
at.
but
It might just be a light situation.
yeah, maybe it's just a light thing, or like a really high, like a high yield light or something. Because like a high beams, like that's a pretty bright light. Like that would definitely, at the very least, it would scare it off.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like the ultraviolet, maybe that's like the thing that actually like banishes it from you.
Yeah, at least puts it on like a cooldown before it can manifest again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, I guess my point is that the drugs, because we get drugs mentioned at the very beginning, the sense of fear and danger wasn't there for me. Like, oh yeah, they're there, but is he just tripping? The entire time, like, like if we had something that just sort of solidified a potential reality situation, like having the note moving around and actually being creepy.
Well, confirming that the note is moving around instead of
Yeah.
like because of identicalness and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or having the creature touch him.
Yeah.
There's been no contact, so we don't like. That's one signifier of it being real. If it can actually touch him.
Yeah. And it's not just all in his head type thing, although, yeah. So overall, I'm not going to recommend this.
Okay. And gamer.
Yeah, I'm gonna mostly be puppeting, or not puppeting, parroting.
We did mention earlier that you guys are just puppets that
Yeah.
I talked to.
Yeah, I didn't really see the fear aspect of it, aside from just, the real life fear of what addiction does to people. And as I said before, right from Jump Street, it puts Nair forward as a unreliable narrator, so it's hard to believe anything happening as fact. Even like the paper moving around, he just sees the paper the second time. He doesn't even touch it. It might not actually be there. He might just be.
Did he not
like,
grab?
Not the second time.
Hey,
I think the sweet spot for this is, yeah, it's only in his head, but it is still a thing.
yeah,
You know,
like it is in his head.
Can influence him, even though only he can see it and only he can interact with it. Because let's say the Mortia is attacking him and like pinning him to the ground, and Michael's there, and he sees that he's flailing on the ground against nothing, but he could try to try to grab whatever's grabbing him and just go straight through it, because it hasn't targeted him, so it's not real to him. But he's still flailing on the ground. So it just looks like he's insane, even though he's actually literally fighting something. And it's literally creating wounds on him. Like he's being choked on the ground. You can see his neck getting red and he can't breathe, even though like he's not able to grab his own neck because his arms are pinned down, There's ways to do it to show that it's actually influencing him.
So that's the thing. Like at that point, we're bringing this into a more visceral horror because the creature is actively trying to kill the person. Whereas that's
its MO.
It is not its MO entirely. It is at no point does it actually try to physically touch the person. It is merely it is psychically attacking them, like drawing in the grief and pain into itself. Like it feeds off of that, and it drives the person to kill themselves or to hurt themselves. So like you're
at that end point, I was like, are you saying that this creature is a member of the Supernatural Task Force and is just
no
out of their
I'm not. I'm saying it's
but right, it is in regards to death at the end, so no.
Yeah. No, I'm saying like it like and your thing, like what you're adding to it is still like is a potential thing to add to it, but like I don't think that's the point of this creature. The point of this creature is to make you hurt yourself, make you hurt it's feeding on you. Unfortunately, it's very subtle in the way it's doing things. So like that's kind of hard to illustrate even in writing sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's the shortness that makes it doesn't hit as hard, because I remember reading some stories. I can't remember the name for the life of me. There's one where this guy's in his house and he like keeps looking outside, and like the creature is always out there like looking at him and stuff. It's like stalking him. I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember what story that was.
Yeah, I know. I don't remember enough details to even help at all. But regardless, the creature's interesting, although I don't know if it's a creature or not because we have unreliable narrators. So I don't know how to feel about this one, but I can't fully recommend it because I didn't get into it, unfortunately. But that's just me.
So you're not recommending it though?
No, not this one.
Okay. All right. So, well, a partial recommendation and 2 non-recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
So before we go into the outro, did this help you guys at all with your take on the previous story? Like, did this help the previous story at all for you guys?
It helps it a little bit because there is a second instance of someone referencing the name, but I don't know if it helps it enough to bump my recommendation up higher.
Yeah, like I think both of them together, I'd still be a partial recommendation. Like I said, I think it needs more meat on its bones for both stories. I think to like before I could, but I did appreciate the connection, the connective tissues between the 2 stories.
Yeah, it didn't do anything for me.
Okay.
So I'm still not recommending them.
Fair enough. But that will do it for this week's episode. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted, whether it be on Podbean, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. We're all on Twitter. Mikey's at the E stands for evil. The Gamer in Yellow is at the Gamer in Yellow hang on. I like stumbled over my words there.
Mm-hmm.
You have too many words in your name.
At this point.
Yeah. The gamer in yellow is the gamer in yellow without that W at the end because his name is very long.
Yeah.
And I'm at Review Cultist. You can also send us emails for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah. And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon. Look up Al Dente Rigor Mortis and select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tier with special episodes, early access, extra content. To our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely. Because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void. I was going to come up with something like into the depressive void. It's like, no, that's just getting too sad. Where was a void?
Screaming in the void.
It'd be like screaming into the void. That horrible depression-addled void.
Oh.
And if you didn't write these stories and post them online, have the courage to post them online for people to view and give opinions about and discuss ad nauseum about. We really wouldn't have much of a show because we'd have nothing to talk about. I honestly despite our differences here, despite my differences with my hosts here, I did enjoy this discussion. I think it's very interesting that how different we took these two stories.
Oh, for sure.
So
I don't know if there's a single recording of our show that I'm like, I wish I wasn't there. Actually, there wasn't one time.
I was gonna say,
aside from that one time that I didn't want to be there because of how uncomfortable I was that the story made me. Because that's actually good points for it because it
made you creepy and it made you creepy.
Regardless,
yeah. All that aside,
even Sonic EXE and Spyro EXE, they were still fun discussions,
Yeah.
Regardless of how much we like or dislike the stories.
Yeah. So again, So it's we got something out of it.
For sure.
And
I feel like I always learn something one way or another, whether it's something like some word I didn't know or just
or the sad truth about how addiction works.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of knew that, but it made me think about it more than I would otherwise.
Yeah. And honestly, that's what I like about our discussions of that and about reading creepypastas. I often get a creeped out by them, or sometimes I just they become talking pieces, or they become thought provoking things. This story is a little bit more deep than I think some stories we've done, because it's dealing with something on both on its surface and at its core. It's talking about depression and grief and stuff like that, which are real world problems and issues. And it does end up making me think, because it's a little bit more not intellectual, but it's a little bit smarter. It's a little bit more of a smarter horror, because it's trying to it seems like it's trying to use these the supernatural, the spookiness of the Mortia to talk about grief and depression and such.
Are you saying Mikey and I are too dumb to understand it?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's what I got out of it.
Yeah.
But again, thank you out there, whoever writes these stories, and if you're listening, if you're one of the authors, thank you again. Regardless of whether or not we liked your story, we always appreciate the discussion that it provoked. So but I think that'll do it for this week's episode. So until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the East Ends of Evil.
And I'm the Gamer in Yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigor Mortis. Sleep well.